Good night. It's the 29th of November 2023 and a very short video here. There is a school of thought that all of this mayhem that we see around us is actually the breaking up of an empire. There were several empires. There was the Roman Empire in particular, and it lasted something like about 800 years, and it eventually broke up. And the way it did it, one of the things that happened was rapid inflation. Instead of having gold coins pure and silver pure, they allied them with copper and the file bits of them and all of that. And this money mayhem in the United States and indeed in Europe to a lesser extent is one of the hallmarks of this. The other thing is that some of these mad things you see with a president in America who can't even make his way down off the stairs of the podium where he's giving a speech, and I'm talking nonsense and all that. And this hysteria about the weather. Let's just look at the policy of all of Europe, nearly, and all of the United States and Canada at the moment is to change the weather. They're actually changing the weather. And there used to be a laugh and stock about King Canute. He sat out in the sea, and he bid the sea not, the tide not to come in. This is the sort of stuff you have, and this could be possible. We're seeing the rise of China, and we're seeing the rise of Russia, and we're seeing the rise of India to a lesser extent. And the problem with this is these are not democratic countries, particularly China and Russia. Really, Russia's not a proper democratic country either. And but they can plan long term, because President Xi can plan up to a certain date, and he could decide he's going, or they can push him out, and they put in another person who continues the policy. And the thing about communism is the type they have in China. There is a government as such, and it's a kind of a collective. It's not democratic, but it's a collective decision. So it lives on after the particular leader. And Putin will no doubt have a say in appointing his own successor as well. And that gives them an advantage if they're good people. In fact, it does give them an advantage. The problem is if it turns out to be wrong. And the funny thing about Putin, he doesn't seem to have any heir. He doesn't seem to have a son or a daughter to appoint. It'll be somebody from within the Russian establishment that he appoints. And so you're going to see Russia having been capable of having a long-term strategy. And I think that's what this Ukraine thing's about. He's setting down the parameters there. This is what the borders are going to be. And that's the thing. And there's no one there to contest. The only answer that the United States have is sanctions. And that's impossible to enforce. The other thing about this is that, and it's the same in the video I made about Eamon Ryan whinging about oil. Oil is now top value. There's no going away from oil. Whether they know it or not, most of them know that the renewables don't work, and the full electric cars certainly don't work. And all of this is slowly breaking down. And they're in 33.7 trillion in debt in America. Now, there could be a change of government there. I don't know. But they've lost in Ukraine, and they're losing their so-called war on climate. The climate's going to go on whether they like it or not. The same thing appears to be happening in Britain. Now, don't forget, we had the breakup of the British Empire. The real final bang of the British Empire was the Suez Canal crisis. I think it was 1956, and they were going to go to war over the Suez Canal, and the Americans stopped them. So it's funny that it's as bad as the British Empire is, that it's still, any wee kick is in it, is now being sucked out of it by Richie Sunak, and they can't wait to get back into the European Union. Whether they will or not, I don't know. But so Canada too is like that. So we could be looking at the demise and the ending of Western civilization, and its replacement by the whole world coming in, and also the freedoms and the rights that we had will dissipate. The young people coming on may actually swallow and believe this climate cultural Marxist nonsense and listen to it. And big efforts are being made to indoctrinate them with all this LBGPQ and all this sort of stuff. So that could be heralding the end. I think that economically it's not working for them. Germany's in decline. France is not doing well. They're after losing all the goodies out of Africa. America's manufacturing is not doing well. These are strong countries, and neither is Britain. It's not making anything at the moment. I don't know, does it produce anything? And the governments doing this were elected by the people, and it is a failure of democracy. It's a count of heads, irrespective of what's in those heads, and that's the bottom line. But it looks to me like China is coming up and Russia's coming up, and indeed there's a school of thought that says that the whole climate codology was all done by Chinese and Russian students who were sent into England, sent into Germany, and sent into America and Canada to indoctrinate the young kids, get them at university, get them at third level schools, mix with them and tell them we have this problem, and that actually that the climate thing is funded, and a lot of this Just Stop Oil is funded from abroad as well. Now that's saying an awful lot, but it's something that has to be borne in mind, because nothing suited China and Russia and India better than to collapse the Western economies and the German economies and replace it with their own, and they are only itching to go, and the Chinese are only starting to go, and the Russians hope to be in on the act as well, and it looks very much like that's the case. If I'm right in that, we could be looking at unbelievable poverty. But I think that one of the things about Western democracy is it seems to let everything go to hell until it's the last minute, and then the voter will rally round. In the case of Churchill, Churchill was not the elected Prime Minister in Britain before the war, it was Chamberlain. And Chamberlain threw a few shapes, and he held a note with Hitler's signature on it, and he came back, and the promptly ousted him and put Churchill in as an agreed candidate, a national government candidate, and put him in there until the war was over, and then they took him out. He was never properly, wasn't properly democratically elected Prime Minister during the war in any event. I don't know whether, I think they had no election in the middle of the war, but anyway, that doesn't really matter. The thing about it is that the same in America, they may just at the last minute they may change it, and you could see. I mean, you see your man in Argentina, this Mealy, and you see the situation in Holland where this girl Wilders, and there's evidence there that Wilders is not considered an extremist in Holland at all. And so this thing of painting the people, the Conservatives, as right wing, it's not going to wash, and that may be how it will go, but it'll be slow. Now the problem with, and the big reason why I'm so much against an unlimited, uncontrolled migration, is that there's no going back with it. You can't reverse. So when they put in Chamberlain and they decided Churchill was better, they could dump out Chamberlain and put in Churchill. When you bring in a million migrants into Ireland, you can't really get them out too easily. Can't get them out. So it's irreversible. That's the insidious, vicious thing about that particular thing. You could take all Ryan's windmills, disconnect them, cut them down, sell them for scrap, and get rid of them. You can cut down the pylons and dump them in a trash and sell them for scrap. But you can't get people out once they're installed, just the same as a lot of the people in America that took over the Indian lands now live on those lands, and they won't be got rid of too easily. You can get me drift there. That's why I believe that this is a crucial test of our will to beat this unlimited migration, whether we succeed or not. Okay, that's my thoughts on it. So is this a collapsing of Western civilization? I don't know. I do know that we're here in an island off the coast of Europe, and we should be able to sit back and look at them and sell them our goodies, sell them our food, our drink, and our whiskey and all, and let whatever happens over there take place. And just before I leave, the other thing is, with all this war now and the huge warmongering of the Biden administration, don't forget, since in the last few years, 2 wars, since I started making these videos for general consumption, 2 wars, and more to come. And it won't be long till they'll be coming after your son and your daughter, and your son will be 18, and the next thing is there'll be a war somewhere, and he'll be conscripted. Because one thing we can be sure of, there will always be wars, and one thing we can be sure of is that if the Europeans and the Americans get their way, they'll be stuck in the middle of them. And we see in Ukraine, they can actually print the money, they can make a certain amount of weapons, but they can't create Ukrainian young men to fight in the war because they're not there. So what do we